everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Britt, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you probably should, because I talk about geeky things, and sometimes I sit on my couch to tell you the stories about the reasons why I drink, even though this is not really one of the reasons why I drink, but I guess it could be, because I was definitely bullied. Let's talk about Power Rangers, but let's also talk about my journey as a Power Rangers fan. This week is the week in which Power Rangers Day takes place, because Power Rangers first aired in 1993, but it aired August 28th, which is a pinnacle day in my life. Don't ask me why. Everything that seems to happen happens on August 28th. Anything important in my life tends to happen on August 28th, so like both of my, they did not come on August 28th, but both of my DNA tests were due on August 28th. Let's just put it that way. It was very strange. Anyway, so I first moved into the dorms on August 20th. August 20th was also my due date at one point. It was my second due date. My first due date was August 15th. I was born September 12th. I was a month late, it's fine. But yeah, so one of the other pinnacle things that happened on August 28th was also Power Rangers first aired in 1993. Now, I did not immediately start watching Power Rangers. I did not. So let's talk about my journey with Power Rangers. So my first knowledge of Power Rangers was when they were they were getting ready to premiere it, and they had these commercials, and each Power Ranger kind of talked about their Zord. And the only one that I vividly remember was Kimberly. It was like a split screen, so they had, you know, Amy Jo Johnson on one side of the screen, and then the Zord coming out of the volcano on the other side of the screen. And she's like, whenever I'm in trouble, I call upon my pterodactyl for help. And I was like, this sounds really dumb. This is like a famous last words kind of thing for me, you know, like, oh, famous last words. Because if I tend to say something is stupid before I check it out, I usually fall in love with it. So Power Rangers, Pokemon, so many different things that this has happened for me. It doesn't always happen, but it definitely happens a lot. So if I tend to say something, if I tend to prejudge something as stupid, I'm usually going to fall in love with it. So there's that. So I really wasn't into it. It was on one time when, so I used to go to this daycare run by this woman named Tina, and her two sons were, one was a little bit older than me, the other one was the same age as me. He was born actually slightly after me. And it was a big deal in our friendship. He was like my best friend for quite a few years, from like the time I was 4.5 when I first started going there until probably about first grade, because he started being homeschooled in first grade. And then that's also where I met Allie, and Allie and I became best friends. Maybe it was second grade, because maybe Allie and I met in second grade, but either way, Allie became my best friend, and then Allie was my best friend until Nikki became my best friend, and then Nikki's been my best friend ever since. So since her 9. Anyway, well, okay, I have quite a few best friends, but Nikki is the longest lasting. Like this, she's not even a friend anymore, she's a sister. Like, let's just be real. So I remember there being an episode on during my time when I was waiting for my parents. My parents came a little late because I was friends with like Robert, and so I would tend to stay a little bit later than daycare actually was, and I don't think Tina probably charged my parents for me staying a little late, but because again I was friends with Robert, so we'd stay in the daycare portion because their house was attached. So their house was here, then there was a quiet room, and then you would walk down these stairs, and then this like what probably used to be a garage at one point, I would guess, was their daycare center. So there was like a kitchen in there, there was a separate entry into there, and then there was like a big just open space with a bunch of different places where you could play or paint or draw, whatever. The quiet room was when we were all in grade, or we were all in school during the summertime, and all the kids were sleeping, all the babies were sleeping, taking their nap, and the school age kids got to go into the quiet room and draw. Anyway, so I remember being on the big TV screen in the daycare center, and I wasn't really paying much attention, but Robert was kind of trying to explain to me because he was a fan. And so he was trying to explain to me, and it was the Evil Green Ranger episodes. And it was actually right before I started getting into it, because I got into it during the Green Ranger miniseries. Anyway, so he was talking about how like sometimes he looks a little gray and sometimes he looks a little green. I don't remember specifically, but he was trying to explain to me like the science behind it. He was making it up, obviously. But Anyway, that next, like, I don't know, next time Power Rangers aired, my cousins had come over from Chicago. I have 3 cousins, Adam, Chris, and Jake. This would have been when it was just Adam and Chris. Jake would have been like a year old. So Adam is 2 years younger than me, Chris is 3 years younger than me. So I was like 7 at the time. So that means then that Adam would have been like 5 and Chris would have been like 4. They were also super into Power Rangers. So I realized this is a boy thing. Even though I was a tomboy, so it was weird that I was like, it's a boy thing. They were like, we're gonna watch Power Rangers. I'm like, okay, I don't want to watch it though. I'm like, no, you should watch it with us. Please come watch it with us. Please. So they sat me down in the recliner in my grandma and grandpa's downstairs living room. The recliner that my Aunt Teresa spent a lot of time in before she passed away. Anyway, it's a whole different conversation. But yeah, so they sat me down in the recliner. They basically held me down while we watched the final episode of the Green Ranger miniseries. And the only reason I remember that is because I remember when the Megazord picked up the Dragonzord, it flung it around a lot, and then it hit a mountain, and the mountain exploded, essentially. Or, well, just crumbled apart, but whatever. Now I remember that because I remember No Way, which is clearly not Jason David Frank, but I digress. But anyway, I vividly remember just that moment. I don't remember anything else from that watching. I remember vividly that moment. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it started. So I got myself caught up on Power Rangers because we were able to buy some of the VHS tapes. And I just kind of watched reruns as much as I possibly could to be able to get caught up on it. And I would watch it. I watched it, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with Jason. You all know that story by now, right? But we're going to say it again. Because I told the future. I did. I told the future. Me, this person, right here. I'm a psychic. Anyway, moving on. So, Jason leaves Power Rangers. I'm devastated. My parents were thinking that it was enough to maybe actually make me stop wanting to watch Power Rangers. It didn't. So I was sad for weeks that when Jason left the show. The last to say John left the show when Jason left. Cried and cried and cried and cried. Eventually I'd stopped crying and my mom asked me what if I was over it, and I go, well, I am. She goes, well, that's good. And I said, well, I thought about it, and I was like, you know how I want to be the Gold Ranger? And my mom goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm gonna be the Silver Ranger instead. And she goes, why? And I said, because Jason's gonna come back and Jason's gonna be the Gold Ranger. I said this before the first movie came out because I also remember going into the theater, and then at the end, during the credits, I was sitting there just huffing and puffing, and Mom was like, what, didn't you like the movie? I said, no, I love the movie. She goes, okay, well, what's wrong? And I go, that little kid says he's gonna be the Gold Ranger. Okay, what's wrong with that? I made that Gold Ranger up. He stole it from me, and Jason's gonna come back and be the Gold Ranger. So Zeo wasn't even a thought in people's heads yet. So, just saying. Then Zeo happened. So I'm sitting there with my best friend Nikki. We're watching Power Rangers together, and here comes the Gold Ranger. And I said, it's Jason. She goes, it's not Jason. Get over it. Move on. I was like, it's Jason. She's like, it's been years, Brittany. It's been years, Britt. Just move on. I was like, no, it's Jason. I'm guaranteeing it's Jason. It wasn't. And then it was. And Nikki goes, how did you do that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I just knew Jason was going to come back, and he was going to be the Gold Ranger when he came back. For years. My parents thought, like, okay, whatever. And my mom, even to this day, she's like, I was like, you're going to be so devastated when eventually there's a Gold Ranger, and it's not Jason. She was like, I'm very concerned about that. And then Nikki thought I was crazy. And all of my friends that still watch Power Rangers, they all thought I was crazy. Jason was not coming back. Jason was not going to be the Gold Ranger. And then Turbo. And I lost Jason again, except for the movie. But whatever, it's fine. Over it. Anyway, so Jason... what? So Turbo. So Turbo happened, and I loved Turbo when I was a kid. I loved it, because I loved the fact that they made a kid my age. He's like, I think a year older than me, but whatever. I love that they made a kid a Power Ranger. It made me feel like I could be a Power Ranger one day. It like made my dreams come true. I was gonna be a Power Ranger. Loved it. Loved all the crazy episodes. I look back at that now and go, what was wrong with my head? It was one of the worst seasons ever. Anyway, so there's that. And then In Space. Still to this day, one of my favorite seasons. Nikki and I always had this deal that we could never like the same character. Same favorite character. We could not have that same favorite character. I do want Nikki back on my channel. Maybe for another mukbang where we could talk about that rule we had. But we set that during Power Rangers because she liked Tommy and I liked Jason. We were going to keep it that way. So she really liked Andro, so I was just in love with Carlos. I was still in love with Carlos. I loved Carlos in Turbo. I was very much in love with Carlos. In Space happened, and now real quick, In Space, spoiler, this will spoil the end of In Space. I was very traumatized at the end of In Space because Zordon died. And I was like, well, they obviously ended Power Rangers right then and there, which originally was supposed to be the end. So, but that traumatized me tremendously. Because I was like, Power Rangers is over. I actually have this diary. I should see if I can find it. It's a Power Rangers diary. Shocker. I have this diary somewhere. I'd love to find it and read you some of the entries in it. Because they were interesting. And I was like, today is the worst day ever because I think Power Rangers just ended for good. And then it didn't. Because then they announced Lost Galaxy. It was, like I said, it was supposed to be the end. But then it did so well that they ended up renewing it for another season. And they did Lost Galaxy, which was the final season that I watched, like, in sequence, for the most part. Because Lost Galaxy destroyed me. There was so much death, you guys. You know, I mean, and then, okay, you know, Lost Galaxy spoilers, hi. You know, so when Mike dies, obviously, in like the first episode, I don't know why I count that as a spoiler, but I guess I do, kind of. Anyway, Mike dies, kind of. I mean, I know, because I've seen all of Lost Galaxy many times, but, you know, you have the whole, like, Mike falling into the chasm thing, Magna Defender dying. That hit me just as hard in Ginga Man, just to be honest with you. Hit me just as hard as it did in Lost Galaxy and Ginga Man. And then Kendricks. So after all those things happened, it ruined me. Like, it was just a lot for a 12-year-old because I was 12 at the time. And actually, I know when the show first aired, it aired while we were at Disney World. I think I've said this story before too, but it aired for the first time at Disney World when we were at Disney World. And I made my family stay back late. They went for a walk around the resort that we were staying at, the Wilderness Lodge. They went for a walk around the resort because I wanted to sit down and watch Power Rangers before we went to Magic Kingdom. I regret nothing. At this point, a lot of my peers had stopped watching. Nikki actually still watched. But a lot of my peers stopped watching at this point. And I was bullied a lot, which is why I think, another reason why I think I wanted to stop watching Power Rangers, because I was starting to get bullied a lot for still liking Power Rangers. Right around the time Turbo happened was when a lot of my friends stopped watching Power Rangers. A few would still watch Power Rangers, but many of them had stopped at that point. And I started getting made fun of for it. And I did not feel comfortable with that. I hated being bullied. I hated giving people reasons to hate me. And so I kind of also lost interest in Power Rangers for that reason as well. Like, it was something that I still had a lot of trouble when I got back into it sort of in high school. We'll talk about that in just a second. When I got back into it sort of during high school, it was not something I talked about unless it was Nikki. Nikki was literally the only person. I didn't even talk to my parents about it. Like, my parents didn't really quite understand that I still watched Power Rangers. So it was just something that I hid from a lot of people during that time because I was just so afraid of people making fun of me or people thinking I was weird. So I think that also played into why I stopped watching Power Rangers, but also the deaths of Lost Galaxy. It just was a lot. So then I stopped watching. So I did not watch any Lightspeed Rescue. And you guys know my feelings on Lightspeed Rescue. I don't hate it. I don't like it. It's pretty low on my list, if I'm honest, because there's a lot of production issues I have with it, but it's a pretty decent season. Like, it's a pretty decent adult season. You know, the storyline is actually pretty good. I just think some of the production value was atrocious, and the acting was atrocious. Not as bad as Samurai, but bad. But either way, I didn't watch that at all when it aired, so I also have no nostalgia when it comes to Lightspeed Rescue. Like, that's like the other piece of it. I'd watched maybe 2 episodes, but like, let me just put into perspective for you. It was like during the Disney seasons in high school when I would have seen those 2 episodes. And the only reason I watched them is because I bought a DVD that had like what they called legendary episodes, and it was, I can't even remember. I think it might have been the team up with Lost Galaxy. I don't even remember what episode. It probably was. It was like Forever Red was on it. White Light was on it. There was a Time Force episode too, but I don't remember what one it was. I'd have to find that DVD. I would love to find that DVD at some point and look at it, because like it had what they called legendary episodes on it, and there were 2 episodes of Lightspeed Rescue. I think they were the team up with Lost Galaxy. I cannot remember off the top of my head completely. But I really didn't watch a single episode of it during its airing, so I also have absolutely no nostalgia for it, which is why I also think that a lot of people's love for it is also nostalgia, because of the fact that they watched it when it was new. I didn't. I did watch bits and pieces of Time Force as that aired, enough to know that I loved Circuit, and enough to know that I loved Eric. And Nikki watched that season. I know she watched Lightspeed Rescue too. I should ask her how she felt about Lightspeed Rescue. But I know she watched Lightspeed Rescue as well. But I know she watched Time Force because her favorite character was Trip. Because she just liked the guy with the green hair. And so that I watched on and off, kind of as I would find it on. Like, I didn't search for it. If I was flipping through channels and it was coming on or was on, I'd watch it, and that was the extent of it. And like I said, I watched enough of it to know that I loved Circuit and that I loved Eric. And then Wild Force happened. So I didn't start watching Wild Force right at the beginning of Wild Force, but I had heard that Austin St. John was coming back as Jason for Forever Red. And so I started watching it in reruns mostly at first. I didn't watch new episodes. I watched it in reruns to try and kind of get caught up. And by the end of Wild Force, I had seen it all, and I was starting to watch it new again. And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I really loved Forever Red. Thought that was a really well done episode. Still, I mean, it's not my favorite, but it's not my favorite team up, but it's still a pretty solid team up, if I do say so myself. Anyway, so then came Ninja Storm. I really wanted to like Ninja Storm because it was the first time there was a yellow boy Power Ranger. If only I had known. I think I did at that point, actually. Because high school was also when I got into the concept of Sentai. I didn't watch it, but I was starting to like read up on it and learn more about it, and learn that the Yellow Ranger in the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is actually a boy named Boy. But anyway, so I really wanted to like Ninja Storm because it was the first time we had a guy that was a Yellow Ranger and a girl that was the Blue Ranger, and blue is my favorite color, always has been, even though I kind of would go back and forth with whatever color Power Ranger was my favorite color as well. Whatever Power Ranger was my favorite was also my favorite color. There we go, that's what I meant to say. Anyway, so I was really wanting to like Ninja Storm, but it just didn't capture me the way that I wanted it to, so I really didn't watch a ton of Ninja Storm. I watched a little bit of it as it aired, which really saddened me because it's actually such a good season. And then Tommy came back for Dino Thunder, and I was like, sold. So I watched Dino Thunder as it aired. I had also heard rumors that Blake Foster was going to come back as Justin, and that David Yost was going to come back as Billy. Obviously that never happened. Neither one of those ever happened, but those were the rumors that I'd heard at the time, so I was very excited. So then after that was SPD. And I'd come into this realization after trying to watch SPD, because I didn't like SPD either at first. Oh, it's so hard for me to say. The next one's even harder, because you guys know how much I love the next one. So SPD I didn't like it right away. And I was like, okay, so I like every other season. So I liked Wild Force. I completely negated the fact that I liked Time Force, but whatever. I liked Wild Force. I didn't like Ninja Storm. I liked Dino Thunder, so I don't like SPD, so that means I'm going to like the next one. So the next one, Mystic Force, aired when I was a freshman in college. As a matter of fact, I was in this very spot the first time I ever watched Mystic Force. This very spot, with not that very same TV or this same couch, but I was in this very spot because I was here for a week or a weekend or something, and I caught it on, and I was like, oh, this is that new Power Rangers season. I forgot all about it. So I started watching it, which you have to understand. I don't like vampires. I don't like the concept of vampires. I don't like stories about vampires. I don't like vampires. I just don't. They turn me off. The very first episode of Mystic Force I ever saw was when Vita got turned into a vampire. So I didn't judge it very well. That's why I usually give 3 episodes before I decide if I like something or not. I'm like, okay, this is about vampires, and never mind. Because that's the thing, is if it's about vampires, I'm immediately turned off. Like, if it's about vampires, I immediately lose all interest that I ever had in anything. So I never read or watched Twilight, because I'm like, oh, vampires? Nope, thanks. No, I'm good. I'm good. And then I learned the problematic nature of it, and now I really don't want to ever partake in it. But anyway, but yeah, if it's about vampires, unless it's Nosferatu, I'm a film historian, okay? Give me a break. Unless it's Nosferatu, I don't care. Like, I'm immediately turned off. Like, if you're gonna hand me a vampire story, I'd be like, nope, I'm no longer interested in it. I don't care how good it is. I am no longer interested in this trash. It's cool if you like vampires, I just don't. So that was the very first episode of Mystic Force that I ever saw. So I did not give it my 3 episodes because, like, oh, it's about vampires. Gross. Cut to today where it's like my 3rd favorite season of Power Rangers ever. I want to rewatch Mystic Force right now. True story. So that's when I stopped interest in Power Rangers, like, at all. The next season, of course, was Operation Overdrive, which I did watch. Once a Ranger. I did watch that. I did pay attention enough to watch that because I was like, okay, it's 15th year, 15th season. I do want to watch that team up. So I watched that team up because I knew Adam was coming back. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to watch that. So I did watch that. And then I didn't watch it again until Megaforce. So I did not watch any Jungle Fury. I didn't watch any RPM. I didn't watch any Samurai. And then Megaforce came along, and I was like, again, it was like the 20th anniversary, and I had been doing some reading on it, and I had read that they were going to have a big, huge team up for the 20th anniversary. So I was like, okay, cool. But now there's a whole bunch of seasons that I don't know anything about. So that's what prompted me to do a big rewatch of Power Rangers and watch all the seasons that I hadn't watched, which is what snowballed into this now, me being part of the Power Rangers community. Hi, you're welcome. Hi, I love all of you. You're my favorite community yet so far. Like, I've been part of the anime community. I have been part of the Doctor Who community. And you guys are the most welcoming, wonderful human beings alive. Like, I adore every single one of you. None of you try to mansplain. And any of the dudes out there, none of you try to mansplain Power Rangers to me. I love all of you. If you are part of the Power Rangers community, you are one of my favorite human beings on the face of this planet. End of story. Moving on. Anyway, so Megaforce. So I watched Megaforce. I was very confused with, Jaden's episode. I was very confused with Casey's episode. But I was like, eventually those will make sense to me. And that's what prompted me, because I found out that Power Rangers was on Netflix. So I watched all of it. It took me a while, because it did take me like 6 months to watch Turbo, because that was when I rewatched Turbo and I was like, oh, this is awful. A lot of nostalgia except for Turbo. Turbo was like, oh, why did I like this season? Because you have to remember, I had already finished, well, I hadn't graduated yet, but I had already studied a whole bunch of film criticism and film history, and so that puts a big damper on me watching things without looking at it critically and dissecting it and looking at all aspects of production and being like, oh, this is actually atrocious. So you just have to forgive me on that. I also did not finish Lightspeed Rescue during that rewatch thing that I went through. I just didn't finish it. I did eventually finally finish it early last year. Because I started watching it on my trip to Disney World. I finished it shortly after Disney World because of having watched Go-Go 5. And that was just my goal. I was going to finish it. So that's what snowballed into me getting into the Power Rangers community and really falling in love with the franchise again and just really wanting to really dive deep into Power Rangers once again. And that's also what got me into Super Sentai. During the mid-2000s when I was, I would say, it was after I lost interest in Power Rangers, I did watch Jetman and Zyuranger, not entirely legally, but I had not learned that I didn't like that until about a year after that. So, but I didn't really watch Super Sentai then until it started being released by Shout, and now I've watched everything that's been released so far in the Super Sentai, and no, I'm not going to watch things illegally. Just not something I do. You do you. I'm not here to judge, but I am here to say that that's just not what I want to do, and that should be respected just as much as your choices should also be respected anyway. So that's where we're at. I did waver a little bit during Dino Charge and Ninja Steel. I did waver a little bit where I did fall behind, but I eventually got caught up again. But now I've been watching it as it airs since the beginning of Beast Morphers. So, and that's where we are now. So that's where I am in my journey of being a Power Rangers fan from basically 1993 all the way to today in 2001. So happy Power Rangers Day. I am so happy to know each and every one of you here in the Power Rangers community that I've gotten to know so far. You are all really great. I love learning from you. I love listening to what you guys have to say. And I hope to be a larger part of this community as time goes on. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet and you're part of the Power Rangers community, you just stumbled across this video, I hope you guys subscribe to my channel. I'm going to leave some cool things below to people that I really like, channels I like, a podcast that I was actually a guest host on, but I think you guys should listen to because they're really great guys. And again, I was welcomed with open arms when I guested on their podcast, and I hope they have me back at some point. So stay tuned for that. I will see you guys all next time. If you guys want to see the first time I told the story about when I told the future about Jason, you guys can click right here. If you guys want to see me rank all the Power Ranger seasons in a tier list, you guys can click right here. Click here to subscribe to my vlogging channel where I'm a pet parent. Click here to subscribe to my main channel, which is this one. Hit the bell on notifications for both of those channels so you don't miss a single one of my videos, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye!